In 2017, I only played 14 video games, 10 of those being different IPs, so I had just enough to fill out a top 10, which led to some underwhelming entries. In 2018, however, I went above and beyond by playing almost twice the amount. Granted, I still played a lot of games I didn't like very much, and most of those were games I briefly played at a friend's house. But I assure you that I got properly invested in the 10 games on this year's list, even though I didn't finish all of them. Just like the rules for my last year's top 10 games list, the games on this list are not only games released in 2018, but also older games that I played for the first time that year. How does this list and the exclusive games of 2018 fare against the previous? It'll be hard to beat 2017, so let's find out how 2018 compares. One of the games I tried at my friend's house was the entertaining co-op game known as Gang Beasts, and unlike many other games I tried over there, I actually played this one a lot. That's because it became my friend group's go-to co-op game that we would often play at gatherings, which enhanced the experience even further. It might not be a very well-designed deep game or anything, but it's really damn fun, enough to make the list. It's very satisfying to headbutt others unconscious and then throw them into fiery pits of death, all the while looking silly as hell. It can be hard to win, but when you do come out on top, it's like getting the victory royale, but without the cancer. And even if you lose, Gang Beasts is the best way of getting gangbanged. I talked about My Hero One's Justice before, but I might as well talk about it again. My Hero Academia has become one of my favorite shows, and while this game is a bit poorly made, it has a lot to offer to an MHA fan like myself. Sure, the mechanics are very bare bones, and the cutscenes look really underwhelming compared to the show's excellent art and animation. But with fun 3D fighting gameplay and juicy fan service, this game managed to satisfy me well enough despite its flaws. I wish for a better sequel, with more playable characters that deserve to join the fray, but this outing wasn't too shabby, and was a decent first entry of a fighting game based on a beloved anime. I found it way easier to get into the first-person shooter series Resistance than the FPS I put at the bottom of my list last year, Killzone 2. It's nowhere near my favorite franchise, but I was invested enough to finish all of them. Fall of Man was fine, but I liked the sequels more that improved the gameplay and visuals. I'd say Resistance 3 is overall the best game, as it improved upon many faults the previous two had, notably the weapon system, but I'll have to say that Resistance 2 was my favorite. 3 might have improved the gameplay, but went from 60 to 30 frames per second and downgraded the visuals. I played Resistance 2 on its 10th anniversary and was still impressed by the scenery. I'll always remember the tremendous feeling of entering San Francisco in the midst of an alien invasion, with multiple giant ships in the orange sky. It was breathtaking. As for the gameplay, it's kind of a shame you can only carry 2 weapons at a time and have to find them scattered on the battlefield, but the weapons are really good, especially the new ones, and the Augur's shield has been beefed up. The gameplay offers more variety too, like escaping rising water and taking on entire hordes of chimeras at once. The varied environments also kept it from being too repetitive, which was an issue I had with Fall of Man. The worst aspect with 2 is probably the difficulty. It was impossibly tough even on normal mode, and if I am to replay it, I'll rather go with easy mode. If it's still hard on that mode, then at least Resistance 2 lives up to its name. I don't have any experience with previous God of War games, aside from trying out a demo for what I believe was Ghost of Sparta, which I didn't like all that much. The combat was a bit uninteresting, I suppose. It's not like the combat in the PS4 version is all that interesting either, but I think it gets the job done, and it's far from the only thing going for this game. It otherwise has a well-written story with widespread lore based on Norse mythology, making for an interesting world. Alfheim was particularly fascinating to explore. There's also a nice relationship between Kratos and Atreus that develops really well throughout the journey. Although the combat isn't its strongest aspect, it's very satisfying to use the axe, and to throw it especially. Kratos can even use the Force, so that's pretty cool. It's nice that Atreus isn't completely useless either, and can be used to shoot arrows at enemies. I can see why people consider this one GOTY material for 2018, but I personally don't think it's the best. Then again, I didn't finish it, so maybe there's something insanely good towards the end that I missed. I did get pretty far into it though, and might have stopped because it's a bit too long. Here's a popular game I never tried for 5 years, GTA 5. I was always interested in playing it, but I wanted to wait until it didn't cost so much, hence why I waited a good while for a good price. I'm a big fan of open world games, and this one has so much to offer, although maybe a bit too much. I think this game has the makings to become one of my favorites, but I haven't gotten very far into it yet. It has open world driving, which is one of my favorite things in gaming. After all, Test Drive Unlimited and even The Crew, which is a spiritual successor to TDU, are some of my favorite games. Still, I feel like GTA gets bogged down a bit by its missions. Not like they're bad, but they're inconsistent in quality, and sometimes I just want to do something else. I know I have the option to choose, but I can't get further without progressing, so I have to bear with it. I still really like it, of course. You don't reach number 6 without being good, but currently it's not among my favorites, not even in the open world genre. I haven't gotten far into any GTA game, but I prefer 5 over 4 and Vice City. Last year, the classic Crash Bandicoot trilogy got a remake, and while that was nice and all, it doesn't compare to Spyro getting the same treatment, which thankfully happened in 2018, and was called the Reignited Trilogy. These remakes, while not perfect, are very faithful to their original counterparts and improved on some aspects. It's nice to finally have analog camera controls, and the updated graphics look gorgeous. I will say some character models look iffy, but there are also some I think were improved, like the kangaroo Sheila, who I can easier tell is a girl now. My ranking of the games is still the same for both versions. First, Ripto's Rage, then Spyro the Dragon, and finally, Year of the Dragon. I hate to admit it, but I didn't actually finish the original Spyro 3, so I can't really compare the versions, but some of the playable side characters in this remake were a bit frustrating to control. Mostly Sergeant James Byrd, as his gameplay had perhaps the worst design out of all the games. When you're close to a ceiling, the camera switches to a bird's eye view, and there's a tight cave somewhere that makes the camera constantly switch from both views, which made it nearly impossible to control. Other things I'm not a big fan of are certain character changes, mostly through voice acting. I missed the awkward way the characters spoke in the originals, especially Dorky Hunter. They just don't feel the same anymore. And how can they just normalize Juliet's voice? The purposefully terrible acting in the original made that character memorable. I don't think the remakes can replace the originals because of minor stuff like that. Still, Toys for Bob did a great job, and I'd like them to tackle the series going forward. I've wanted to play Sunset Overdrive ever since it was announced all the way back in 2013, but unfortunately for me, it was an Xbox exclusive, a system I had no intention in buying. Well, guess what? I have even less reason to buy it now, because Sunset Overdrive finally came to PC, against all odds. Seriously, even though most Xbox exclusives eventually come to PC, I thought Insomniac was dead set on keeping it exclusive. I waited 4 years to play this, so was it worth it? Absolutely. It's one of my favorite games, with its amazingly crisp and fun as hell gameplay, similar to the likes of Ratchet & Clank and Infamous, that are games I enjoy immensely. The DLC was included, and while I've only finished one of them so far, that DLC, namely the Moo Oil rig, was a blast. It put the brilliant game design into a more compact playground, and it felt so good to traverse. Of course, like any game, it does have some cons, and while I often like the writing, it could be overbearing and cringeworthy at times. It's good for the most part though, and I loved the fake out at the end. I can't forget the weapons that were very inventive, and the ones that weren't were at least fun to use. The regular machine gun was actually one of the better weapons, although it was stupid that there were 2 of them. Some other weapons had duplicates too, and I don't understand why. That aside though, this game rocks. I'm truly grateful I got to play this game, and I'm very much anticipating a sequel. Please make it happen, Insomniac. Speaking of the moon, they also made the game of the year, Spider-Man PS4, or is it Marvel Spider-Man? Shouldn't it be Insomniac Spider-Man? Regardless, this game is amazing. And yes, I did call it Game of the Year. It's not my favorite game of the year, mind you, but I would say it's objectively the best. And why is that? Well, the gameplay, while sometimes repetitive, is really well designed and satisfying. Both the swinging and the combat is awesome, and the upgrades help to reduce some of the repetitiveness, thus making the combat progressively more fun. The music and graphics are also great, as is to be expected of a title like this, but I was really impressed by the stunning boss battles and action set pieces. They felt like something out of Uncharted. It's true that quick time events are a bit overused, but at least they contribute to some impressive spectacles. I'm not that into Spider-Man in general, but this game undoubtedly has the best story revolved around the superhero, and made me love certain characters that I didn't care too much about before. Like Mary Jane, who I couldn't stand in Raimi's movies, whereas in this game she's actually very cool, useful, and I shipped her with Best Boy Peter Parker, who also reached his peak in this game. Even the main villain Otto was very interesting, and his relationship with Peter led to some amazing plot points. Let's not forget that this game brought us a lot of high-tier waifus, including Mary Jane, Black Cat, Silver Sable, Yuri, and of course Aunt May. Damn, what a great story, and game in general. I honestly didn't think Insomniac still had it in them. I got a Switch in 2018, which was a really good investment as it has masterful games and the amazing gimmick of being able to bring the system on the go. I pretty much spent the whole summer playing Super Mario Odyssey, which has in fact become my favorite Mario game, and the gap between it and Super Mario World is actually pretty wide. I had absolutely no faith that this game would be a masterpiece like the other ones, but apparently Nintendo proved me wrong. Oh so wrong. The most important factor to that is the way they revamped the Mario formula. No longer are coins there just to get health and scores, but you can use them to buy sweet skins. And even better, Mario has gained so much more mobility with Cappy, who can be used in many unique ways. You can even become other enemies with it, and their gameplay is polished to perfection as well, for the most part. Also cool is that I actually cared about the story, which isn't deep or anything, but it's good for a Mario game, where Bowser legitimately feels like a threat, the comedy is on point, and the ending was beyond epic. It continually impressed me with its ideas and amazing worlds, like Bowser's castle actually being Japanese themed this time, a callback to Galaxy in the form of a low-gravity moon level, and even a throwback to Mushroom Kingdom with Super Mario 64 inspired sounds and collectibles. I'm far from the biggest Mario fan, but even I found the fanservice super appealing. As far as platformers go and Mario games, this one is pretty much perfect, and it's yet another fantastic game from 2017 that I just so happened to play a year later. It would have also been top 3 in my previous list. I said Spider-Man was the best game of 2018, and Super Mario Odyssey is definitely the best game on the list, but Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was 100% my favorite. It's very predictable, but I can't be dishonest. Ultimate was believed by many to be an enhanced port of Smash U, but I'm glad it wasn't. It didn't add many new things, but the additions were appreciated. You can play as every single fighter in the franchise, on almost every stage, with a selection of music that exceeds 900, and will probably top 1000 after all the DLC is out. The newcomers, while not the best, do include some heavy hitters, notably Inklings, Ridley, and King K. Rool. World of Light is underwhelming for a story mode, and is nothing compared to Subspace Emissary from Brawl, but I enjoyed going through it, even on hard mode, and loved fighting the bosses. Classic mode has been revamped to be really well thought out, with fitting enemies and bosses for every fighter. Spirits are fun to collect, especially when I find a mascot I love, crushing my hopes because they're not fighters, but hey, at least they were acknowledged. The fighting mechanics have been adjusted ever so slightly that it led to the best combat the series has seen thus far. I don't think it's the best Smash overall though, and I still prefer Brawl, with its superior single-player modes, newcomers, character models, voice acting, and original remixes. But even if this isn't my favorite Smash game, that didn't stop it from being my favorite game of 2018. The biggest evidence for this is that I poured 100 hours into it within 20 days, which I don't believe I've ever done before, so that's truly a marvelous feat. Also, I can't deny the benefits of being able to play it on a big screen at home, as well as a decently sized screen on the go. It's practically the 3DS and Wii U version smashed together, which is a match made in heaven. So, those were my 10 favorite games I played last year. Since I played a lot more games, this top 10 was overall more consistent in quality, and I really liked all of them. But as for games that released exclusively in 2018, it definitely wasn't as good as 2017, that had 4 of my favorite games, Super Mario Odyssey making it 5 now. but 2018 was still a really solid year for gaming. I've said I don't have much faith in 2019 being as good as these years, not for me anyway, but there are some noteworthy releases, and Super Mario Maker 2 got announced not that long ago, so that's another one I'm very much looking forward to. That's it for now though. I'm Arcadon, and hopefully you'll see me next time!